one of our old favorite segments, Weekend Recap.
Weekend Recap.
So for the first NFL Weekend Recap of Week 1, first game, James, take it away. First game that we're going to talk about today.
All right, so we're going to talk about the Cardinals-49ers game.
Big upset.
Now, that's what I really want to talk about here is, look, the 49ers coming off, losing in the Super Bowl, but generally being a strong team all around. They were kind of the team that really weren't weak on any side of the ball.
Yep.
They had a solid quarterback, great defense, amazing running game, solid passing game. Well, they lost to the Cardinals, but I think there's a little bit to take away from that. The 49ers, they just weren't really there. It wasn't really a good game for them. But the highlight here is really with Kyler Murray, to be honest with you. He looked so strong, so good. It was like a little Russell Wilson. I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved it.
I think that comparison that you made is pretty spot on. That's what I thought of him last year and seeing him evolve is he's like a mini Russell Wilson. I wouldn't say he's totally like Lamar, who's a big runner. He did lead the league in rushing. I mean, passing last year, but Lamar I'm talking about. But Kyler seems like more of he does run the ball, but he's also looks pass first, and especially when you have a guy like DeAndre Hopkins on your team.
Well,
that was the big question mark for me.
For them.
That was my big question mark coming into this game. Is DeAndre Hopkins going to have a big impact, as big of an impact as he did last year with Deshaun Watson? And he had maybe even a bigger impact. Not maybe about the same, but huge. 14 receptions, 151 yards, no TDs, but still, that's a huge day for your opening first game with a new team.
He got him down the field consistently, and that's the thing. Especially when, look at the Cardinals, they don't really have, they have a few big names, but DeAndre Hopkins is a next level guy for them. They didn't have a top tier.
He's the best. I think he's the best wide receiver in the game right now.
He either is or is top handful.
I would say he's best, especially after yesterday, which we'll get into it. He who must not be named, who I'm not giving up on, but
talk about it later.
He hurt me in fantasy football. I think DeAndre Hopkins is the real deal. Every year he's one of the best receivers, and I think in my mind that makes him the best, if not, if you can argue top 2. One thing also worth pointing out is even though I admired Kyler's passing, his rushing was. He had a good. He's also a running quarterback, and he led the team in yards with 91 and a touchdown. The kid did it all. And I think Danny Football last week predicted he could be the next because we had a trend of second-year quarterbacks winning the MVP. Lamar Jackson, second year, won the MVP. Patrick Mahomes won the MVP year 2. So he could continue the streak. And after that game, I wouldn't say he's in the top. I wouldn't say he's after week 1 of thinking of people after the day that Aaron Rodgers and Russ had, definitely not slam dunk MVP, but if he continues to do 100 and 200 and 100 a game, which he won't, but still he's going to be right up there in the conversation.
All right, there's a bit of a caveat, mind you, when we're talking about all these NFL statistics. This is the weirdest season on record. Yeah. And really the first 3 or 4 games in my mind are almost counting as preseason games.
Right.
So you're going to get some crazy numbers, some crazy stats. There are some people that are going to be all aboard some bandwagons and they're going to crumble in a few weeks. But vice versa, if this is a trend that continues, that's a playoff team.
Yeah.
Because they look strong pretty much everywhere. It's a solid B all around.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just like the possibilities with the Cardinals. That being said, don't sleep on the 49ers.
Yeah. I mean, I was just going to say that the 49ers, people are giving Jimmy G a hard time where he wasn't he had a tough end of the year. He did pretty well, almost.
He still threw for more yards.
More than 250 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Mostert
and Kittle.
He had a good day. Kittle didn't have a lot going for him. Mostert did both sides of the ball, which was great. Kittle, only 44 yards. You need more out of him. You need him to make more big plays.
And to be fair, they seem like the kind of team where they would have needed that preseason to get things going. Yeah. And that's the theme with a few teams is you really need the preseason to get everything worked out. And for a lot of teams that don't have things preset and have had really a lot of experience with each other, these first 4 games are going to suck. And that's kind of a preview for a few other teams we'll talk about. But
with that said, I think the 49ers, I think, are going to be okay. They're playing the Jets next week. They play the Giants the week after that.
Those would be too good.
The Eagles, Dolphins. Like the next 4 weeks
Wow.
are good. Like 4 weeks to get your bearings and get a couple wins under your belt.
So that's their preseason.
Yeah, I feel like that's. I think they're in good shape. And after that, they play the Rams, which is like a tough game. Then the Patriots. They play a couple hard games. Like they go those 4 games, and they play Rams, Pats, Seahawks, Packers, Saints. So they go like 4. Couple like games they should maybe they're in like the running. Like the Patriots, I think they should be. They play like they did yesterday. I think the Pats have a chance, but still those 2 like are toss-up games, and then they got like a couple games in a row. Like the Packers, Saints, and Seahawks are going to be a tough game for them. But then it's very like they have a very up and down schedule where they can rattle out like the next 4 weeks. They could easily rattle out 4 wins. So I don't sleep on them. I think they're okay, but definitely an impressive win for the Arizona Cardinals.
So what's our next one?
So the next game, before we put it up there, I think we have producer John has a clip fresh off the presses coming out today on Instagram. So you already would have seen it, but still would play it. I'm not as sold on the Bucks as other people are. And I'm a big Tom and Gronk guy, but I'm not sold on him. I think the Saints are going to win week 1. Shock the world.
Wow.
With I think
Tom
Saints
Brady's first game goes down in an L.
Yeah,
Damn.
goes in an L. I must say, I guess, like looking at like if you look at like the spreads and like predictions, they did have the Saints winning that game as a slim favorite.
I think the general
consensus
was like Bucks are gonna wash them. Maybe not wash them, but win.
Well,
and especially after that first drive when they Tom Brady ran in a touchdown. Like that's like and they marched down the field. But my doubts in that team are still there. Their offensive line is garbage.
Oh yeah,
if you will. They were banged up. Like Mike Evans had a 2-yard touchdown, had a hamstring issue. Chris Godwin was banged up in that game. They have second-year Scotty Miller, who look out for, and O.J. Howard out of nowhere. But like a lot of Gronk was non-existent. Mm-hmm. Like they have a lot of guys that like they're either banged up, bad offensive line. Their defense was It's a very blah team, but you add Tom Brady in and you just magically think he's going to be, you're going to go 16-0. It's absolutely, I mean, I don't think people are thinking 16-0, but you're thinking they're going to win a Super Bowl?
No. The thing is, with a defense that bad, letting the Saints put up 34 points, you won't win a Super Bowl. Odds are, like, not to call it too early, but everybody's looking at Kansas City.
Right.
The Super Bowl contender, easy.
They're the favorite, easy favorite.
Easy favorite, and for good reason.
Right.
So here comes the question. If you give up 34 points to the Saints, what would you give up to Mahomes?
Yeah.
And granted, they have time to fix this, but the Bucs were going to have to rely on 2 things. 1, the defense doing their job, and 2, Brady being able to pass the ball with one of the best offensive teams he's ever had.
Right.
And neither of those worked.
Now, a couple things also with that. Tom Brady, I also know, if you look at and part of it's the Patriots, which we always said, but Tom Brady was part of the Patriots for the last 20 years. He's never had a good September. Never.
No.
They're usually 500 or like have a slow start. Mine is like, last year we started off like 11-0, 10-0, but normally we have a slow start to the season. Tom coming to a new team, no preseason games, not a consistent preseason. What do you expect? Like, I didn't think they were going to, when you have like a guy like Drew Brees who's had years with Michael Thomas,
and
a few years with Kamara.
Taysom, I think, as well took a few.
Taysom Hill had, they used him right away too. They had that trick play that he threw the big one down the field. He had a rushing, but the Saints core has been together longer. And I just feel like, you can bring in a Leonard Fournette who, people on YouTube that thought Ronald Jones was trash and Leonard Fournette's going to be the number 1 back. Yeah, well, I guess I was wrong about Ronald Jones, who is a stud and had a great first week.
I think we all kind of called that one, which was like, again.
Yeah, dude, you were getting smashed.
The thing is, like,
Leonard Fournette did 5 yards, guys.
Like, the thing about it is, and I don't want to slam Leonard Fournette because he was here for like 3 days, but watch the whole video, people, because like literally no one on this panel said that he was terrible.
No, he's a great talent. Yeah. We've all said that.
We just said it was a bad fit because they got Ronald Jones, who is a good rusher and is a bell cow.
There are so many comments like, you guys don't even watch football. If you don't think Leonard Fournette's a top 1 running back in the league.
Top running back putting up 5 yards. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, buddy.
And I mean, he only got 5 carries, but like, if you're gonna say, first of all, their offensive line is trash. Ronald Jones has been playing with them longer, so of course he's gonna get the carries. And after this, he had 66 yards and had some good runs. Yeah. He's gonna be the lead carrier next week. Tom Brady had more yards on less attempts than Leonard Fournette. Let that sink in. And a touchdown. Let that sink in for you. It's wild. And I'm not saying this to trash Leonard Fournette because I think he is a great talent and I think he is a good running back. But when you go in when they already have an established young running back in their camp, you have Tom Brady who's going to throw the ball a ton. Didn't I say? I said this to you too, James, off air. I was like, Tom Brady's what do they think they're gonna rush? They're gonna rush probably 20 to 30 times a game, maybe 25. Yeah. They ran the ball 26 times total, including Tom Brady's few sneaks. Yeah, 26 times. They threw the ball 23, so 36, which is probably the breakdown that I thought. Yeah. You have Tom Brady, you just spent all this money. You have Mike Evans, who has a big contract. You have
Gronk.
You have Gronk. You have Mike Evans. You have
Godwin. You have
Chris Godwin, OJ Howard. You have all these guys. Even throw Scotty Miller in there. You have all these guys you got to share the ball to. They're not going to worry about run. Plus, your pass catching back in who's I get isn't as good, which people keep saying. I get LeSean McCoy is not as good as Leonard Fournette, but he has better hands than Leonard Fournette, I'll say that. But it's there's not enough footballs to go around people. No. He's not going to get the ball. That's it. So that was my one rant.
It's not about how it's having better players all around. It's about having better players in positions that matter.
Right.
And where they can actually have an effect.
Now, down the stretch, when they have Leonard, when they're on the goal line, now they have Tom Brady, who's one of the best QB sneakers. Carson Collinsworth, who's a moron, says it all the time. I think Tony Romo called it the Tom Brady when they had a QB sneak. It's he's one of the best to do it, which I get. He's able to get in and get the extra couple yards.
Sparingly. You never expect it. That's the thing.
Right. So I get it, but that's what I said Leonard Fournette's job on the team was going to be, was the goal line back, try to bust in.
Because you can't risk
Tom. But when you have Tom in there who sneaks it, then that eliminates my thought of that. They got to be on the 1 or 2. So, sorry, that's my rant on Leonard Fournette. I think he's great. Not even Leonard Fournette, the people on YouTube thank you for letting the video blow up, because you're the reason why it did. Yeah. But watch the whole video, people. That's it. That's a PSA from us. We're a year in. Watch the whole video, okay? Before you start making accusations that we think Leonard Fournette stinks. He isn't. Anyways, getting back to it. Tom Brady had a rough day because, I say that sparingly, he had 2 picks. That's the reason why I say that. Yeah. But he did throw for over 200 yards, 2 touchdowns, plus a rushing touchdown. And I blame it on he hasn't had time to go with his team, play with his team enough.
Well, basically, every variable has changed, but he has Gronk. Right. Besides him, everything else has changed.
And he hasn't had Gronk in over a year.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. People are expecting Gronk to be this big guy. He's been sitting on the couch partying for the last year.
As we said, and we talked about this before, he won't be a big threat till later in the season, if not postseason.
Right.
Because, number one, he's injury prone, so they can't risk really pushing him early on, because then why give him all the money and all the roster spot? But that's when he's going to be effective.
The thing that stood out to me before we move on to the Saints about this was Bruce Arians after the game put sole blame on the 2 picks on Brady.
Well, also the defense. Well, yes, Brady throwing 2 picks is not good.
Oh, I mean, just those 2 picks were on him. That was his fault.
I thought one of them was tipped or something, or one of them was one of those.
There were 2 bad picks, but the thing that stands out to me is he went through 20 years of Belichick ripping him apart, but in private. Yeah. That's the difference. Belichick would rip him a new one. We heard it from, Lonnie and Jaguar. They both said Tom would be ripped apart in meetings. Yeah. But I'm sure he'd much rather that than have Bruce Arians post press conference say these 2 picks are on Tom. Those are bad picks. Yeah. That's pretty bad of your starting quarterback.
Tom knows. Not for nothing. He's been doing this longer
than you don't have to say that. That's pretty.
And he didn't know by now, and he somehow won all these Super Bowls.
That's
and
pretty
the winningest quarterback ever.
So I bet that's one thing he's regretting. I think that left a salty taste in his mouth. with that. I don't know how long that's going to last if Bruce Arians keeps blaming Tom for all the mistakes. Which, granted, probably they are.
I'm
but
gonna bet you Gronk might pull him aside and be like, "Bro, don't do that."
Gronk doesn't have the mental capacity to do that.
Hey, I hope he's looking after his boy.
Now, shifting to the Saints,
Yeah,
they played pretty good. Like Drew Brees didn't have like he had a good game, but he threw only 160 yards and he threw 2 touchdowns. But
the
only
thing is, the Saints were efficient, and to be
they
fair,
were efficient.
those two picks were huge. That's why they're not going to put up big numbers because they were kind of given to them. But they were efficient. They got the ball, where they needed to go. A bunch of first downs, made it happen. And honestly, a lot of credit actually to Kamara finally,
Kamara had a great day.
actually doing something.
Leader of my
Murray
fantasy team.
doing well, Jared Cook doing well.
Now, I think the big thing about the picks that you said was like one was a pick six, so they scored off it. The other one they scored from off the drive. So very efficient, I think, is a perfect word for the Saints.
But if you take those 2 away, then obviously the Bucks would have won by 3.
Right.
So that becomes the question of the Bucks kind of handed it to the Saints, but the Saints still did earn it.
Right.
So and the Saints still have some things to figure out. Don't get me wrong, like only going 18 for 30 for Drew Brees for 160.
Right.
Not great, but also again, they haven't had preseason.
So both those teams are going to be in the thick of it. Saints are a little bit ahead of them, which I thought going in, but I think still.
You were saying too, like once Tom, I think you were saying it too. Once like Tom learns his team, because you were saying he has Gronk, who's the only one he's familiar with.
Yeah.
I remember there was one play. I think it was Miller. I could be wrong on this. I think it was Miller ran the wrong route, or he like decided to run a different route.
Yeah.
And like Tom did, he missed him obviously, and Tom was pissed because that wasn't the route that they planned. And I remember the commentators saying that like the only guy he knows is Gronk. I think Miller even missed like a couple practices or something like that. So Tom hasn't had any time with that new kid.
Yeah.
The only person he's had time with was Gronk. Gronk wasn't efficient at all, so that takes him out of the game. So he's got, who does he have?
Right.
You're shooting in the dark at this point. You're just hoping these guys. You don't I'm not saying he doesn't trust them, but you don't have those years of trust and that time and all that practice.
Exactly.
I shouldn't say who does he have, but who does he have that he knows?
Yeah. So that will come with, as I said, after the September. I think with time that will come.